Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome to another Pride and Grit Spouse Spotlight. I am excited to bring you someone new to me, and maybe she's new to you. But regardless, I am excited to introduce you to Michelle Bowler and talk a little bit about her military spouse path, talk a little bit about what she is up to with Dating Warriors and what that is and how it came to be. So thanks, Michelle, for hanging out with us for a little bit today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So give us the highlight reel for those who don't know you, like me. Tell me a little bit about kind of yourself and your military spouse path.
So, like she said, my name is Michelle Bowler. I am an Army wife. We were reserve for 6 years and we've been active duty for two now.
Okay.
Um, we have four daughters, seven, almost six, almost four, and one.
Oh,
So, yeah,
busy
you
plate?
know, busy place, loud place,
Right.
emotional place, any extreme word you can think of, we have it. We have extreme happiness and extreme love and extreme beauty, and then we have extreme chaos and extreme emotions of all
That sounds
sorts.
just like parenthood, really. Like that's just on
Yeah.
par.
Yep. Um, yeah, and then my husband's a chaplain in the military,
Okay.
so it's a different
Yeah.
job. But he was enlisted in an ordnance corps before, so we know kind of
Both sides. Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
Um, we're acquainted with, and yeah, so I've been a mom for 7 years, and then 2 years ago, in May, I started the Waiting Warriors podcast and project. I just really wanted a place um to learn from everybody else. Because like so you asked about kind of my journey as a military spouse. We actually joined after we got married by a few months. We got married in April, and at the time he was in the ROTC class at our university, but he wasn't contracted yet.
Mm-hmm.
He had actually decided that wasn't something he was going to do. And then we met and got married. So I think God was looking out for us. Right when we met would have been when he had like gone to basic and stuff. So we met, but he had tabled that. And, but then after we got married, for some reason, I just started thinking about like, is that really something you don't want to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right. You don't
then
want to regret not doing it, or
yeah.
yeah.
We had like a full weekend where that's all we talked about, and just a ton of time talking about that. And then on Monday, the recruiters called, they check up every now and then.
Yeah. Like
So
funny you should call today.
yeah, my husband he doesn't really believe in coincidences. So after a lot of consideration and looking into everything, he joined. So we got married in April. He joined in July, and we found out I was pregnant in August. And he left for basic in October. So he was with me for the first few months, and then he was gone up
Right.
until just a few weeks before our first daughter was born.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a whirlwind of events in our
Complete.
first year of marriage.
Sure.
Like we had the basic experience of like I didn't get any letters until he left in October. I didn't hear from him until Thanksgiving. So it was like a month and a half,
Yeah.
which yeah, I mean, I can go off on a tangent of that, but like I was up at our university. I was 16 hours away from home, um, just living by myself at that point. Um, not exactly where I thought my first year of marriage was gonna
Sure.
be,
Yeah. No.
and pregnant. So there was a lot of oh, Dory, there was a lot of growing in that, but then that just kind of was a fortune telling of what the next 7 years were going to be. He's been in school while he was in the reserves, but it was always really busy and really intense. He ended up contracting ROTC, which is how he's an officer now. But it's just been like a marathon time frame, but we've been sprinting through it.
Yeah.
It's how it's been. Which all of that has been our choice, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been really hard.
Sure.
And I think it's helped that we have like intense patriotism, we have intense pride in our country, we have intense pride in our military forces, and like a really deep desire to serve
Sure.
like both our country and those families, and that's kind of helped carried it. But that doesn't, it got to a point for me where I had 3 kids. The oldest one was maybe 3.5, and Austin, my husband, was going to be gone for a whole summer. It was like 3.5 months on the other side of the country, bachelor status mandatory. We were poor, so we didn't have any, I wasn't going to be able
Yeah,
to go
going
see
back and
him.
forth, right?
There wasn't going to be any of that. And that summer, I like really broke down in a lot of ways, which was really hard because I like, I want to be able to do it.
Right? No, totally. Like, yeah.
I, my grandma is like straight up from England, came over when she was a teenager type of like, so I have that like
Strength.
stubborn,
Yeah.
yeah, stubborn strength. And I just like, I knew it could be done, but yet I didn't understand why I couldn't do it.
Yep.
At the time I was what, like 24.
That may or may not have some, I mean, like,
Very not
it,
do it, but like,
but I think you're so right that I think that is often for a lot of military spouses a point of kind of confusion, right? It's and I think I mean for myself as well, where you know that you're capable of weathering whatever it is, but and yet it's still kind of verging on breaking you, and you're like, wait a minute, this
yeah,
doesn't reconcile at all with who I think I am or who I think I should be or what I think I'm capable of. Why can't I handle this? I think that like, why can't I handle this thing is where we don't give ourselves kind of enough grace to just understand it's just a hard season and that's okay,
yeah,
and you'll get through it and that strength will serve you. It's just not going to make it all go away right now. You still got to like wade through it. And you're still drawing from that, even if it doesn't look or feel like you are. You absolutely
yeah,
are. But yeah,
yeah,
no, that sometimes those like breaking moments are they're so hard. But then when you turn around and get to look at them after the fact, they're also just like, I don't know, and maybe I don't know for you, but it can also just be really something that you're kind of proud of, right? Like I got through that and I weathered that and I learned these things and now I can help the next person that I meet who's kind of in that same place. So I'm curious if is that was that experience and kind of that low moment, was that part of what kind of made you in the back of your head go at some point like I want to talk about this, or I want to be able to have these stories? Was that kind of where Waiting Warriors came from? Are those two things connected?
yeah, 100%. It was actually that same. It was a year later from that I finally launched, but it was in that summer that I was like, one, it started out with like, I need to hear and learn how other people are doing it.
Mm,
Because it was extremely frustrating to me that like, I know I'm a capable woman, I know I'm a strong woman, I know I'm an independent woman, like all of those things that you need to be a military wife, right? Like you have to be able to do it on your own because your spouse is gone, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, I have that desire, like you were saying, but like it's not clicking. Like, how do we do
right.
this? Like, I had gotten to the point where I couldn't muscle through it anymore.
Sure.
Realized that I needed tools,
Mm-hmm.
and it was tools that for some reason I didn't have.
Yeah.
And so I started the podcast with the intent of learning from other women,
Hmm.
other military and first responder spouses. Um, because I just knew I had this really ridiculous day, and you kind of want to tear jerker and to hear about it. It's like the first episode in the podcast.
Mm,
And I just really broke down and I called my husband and like I just couldn't do anymore. He's like, I can't help you. I have nothing to give you.
mhm.
But we had a friend who was a few years ahead of us in the military and had like super similar experiences than us. And he was like, why don't you call her? And I like couldn't call her. My
Right.
pride just
No,
wouldn't
I
let me
know. Man,
do it.
that pride's a kicker.
It's so dumb. But the next day she called me
No.
totally out of the blue. She called me and I like lost it.
Right.
But we talked for almost like 2 hours, I think.
That's
And I got some of the answers that I needed in that moment, like for what we were dealing with in that summer.
sure.
And so it was after that that I was just like, I have to talk to more people. I have to put my pride down. I have to realize that I don't have, not that I don't have the the endurance, not that I don't have the grit, the pride, all of that,
Hmm.
the gusto, but I don't have all the tools. So
Yeah.
I started interviewing people like I, was talking to my husband about doing it and all that kind of stuff. And it was the next summer that I started. And now it's to the point like I fully recognize that I don't have everything, but I know I've learned so much. Like
Hmm.
8 years has taught us so
Oh,
much. And
yeah.
so with the podcast and with the blog and Instagram and Facebook posts and stuff are where a lot of people, I'm just trying to share more of my story.
Hmm.
And that's what people are really resonating with the podcast and online of just like, one, it's possible to do it, but also like it's hard. And we're just finding a lot of solidarity and connecting with the fact that it's hard, but it doesn't have to be miserable. And
Hmm.
it's not going to be as miserable if we can do it together. So,
Yeah, no, and I think that honest conversation, I mean, it's definitely a piece that I'm a huge believer in, that I feel like I don't know if it wasn't happening when I was sort of a younger military spouse, or I just wasn't in those conversations. Like, I don't know which, but I just don't remember it being a thing, right? Being able to say and talk about what the hard things were and have people really rally around you and be able to help you through those. And now I think there's so much more of an appetite for that honesty, and an
mm-hmm.
appetite for being able to say it's hard, but being able to say, yes, but here's what I did, and here's what helped, and here's how you continue to move forward. I think one without the other doesn't work, right? It's being able to
Yeah.
do both and be able to have both that honest conversation, but also that, and so what, now what are we going to do with that, and how is that going to help me move forward?
Right.
But that's so
Yeah.
cool that you've been able to do that and to talk to so many people and get different perspectives. And what was I guess, I love the inclusion of the first responder spouses, because I
Mm-hmm.
really, up until about a year ago, I really hadn't given much thought, honestly, just through not being aware. But I hadn't really thought about how, while it is different, how
Mm-hmm.
many things really do overlap in some of the challenges. So, what has that kind of learning been like for you?
I've loved it. So growing up, I grew up in Southern California. And if you have any Marines who've been to Camp Pendleton, I grew up in Carlsbad. So Carlsbad is a city that is just south of Camp Pendleton, and that's one of the biggest Marine bases. And then we had San Diego Naval Base, which is like 30 minutes south. So I grew up in a super military
Mhm.
community,
Right.
and I worked in like restaurants and stuff where um Marines were coming in all the time. My church group was like the group in the area that created, or not created, but brought some of the religious services for our denomination to the soldiers who were at basic training and stuff.
Mm.
And like my parents did that, and I went on base to do that. And I was super involved in that and exposed to the military. But at the same time, a lot of people, especially in my church congregation, which I really grew up tight with, had firefighters and police officers in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had these leaders as a young woman um, who were going through these things that now I'm going through.
Right.
And Um, I just I really admired everything that they were going through, and so when it came to do the podcast, it was like a no-brainer.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that there was so much, like I already knew I could learn so much from that community because I already had,
sure.
and I had seen the similarities and the way that the women in my church group had come together, these military wives and first responder wives had come together. So I knew that would be a good blend because, like you said, it's super different. They don't go to war. They don't
Right,
have deployments,
sure.
but
There's still
especially
risk.
now,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot of risk.
there's still uncertainty. There's still,
Mm,
there are still elements that I'm as I've learned more, that I really start to see those overlaps. So that's
yeah.
awesome that you've included them. So sort of looking back as you kind of make that turn and look at, okay, the last 8 years, what would you say for yourself have been overall the number one hardest thing about kind of being a part of this life? And then what would you say is probably the number one thing that you really treasure about that time as well?
The, the hardest part, like the biggest one challenge, has probably been simply doing things on my own.
Mm,
Um, I do not at all want to discredit my husband because he is as involved as he can possibly be. He is super intentional. He is incredible, but he is gone.
yeah, right.
Like,
Like that's the right.
like he just is physically absent, and I have been the one to literally like literally carry at times 4 babies
Right.
and take them to church or take them to the grocery store or take them to library time
Hmm.
or like anything that we were doing, I was physically doing it by myself. And that has been so hard. That is physically demanding, that's emotionally demanding, and especially since like that's not what I thought, when I was 16
Yeah,
and
yeah.
dreaming up, I,
That was not the
all
dream.
that that wasn't the dream. I wanted a big family, but I
Yeah,
pictured this like beautiful family experience on a daily basis, and that just hasn't been what's happened.
sure.
Um, and that is, it still is hard sometimes.
Hmm.
Like they're gearing up for JRTC and being gone a month, but then all the trainings before. So it's like, okay, we're ready to not see him
For yeah,
half of the time for the next 6 months,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and there's just some big challenges that come with that. But ironically, or maybe this is just how life is, that's where the biggest blessing has come from
Hmm.
because I have become an incredibly strong woman,
Hmm.
and I don't always feel strong, but there have been some like really incredible moments where I am talking with other spouses, either military spouses or just anybody who's
Sure.
like dealing with a hard time,
Right.
and the empathy I'm able to experience and have
Mm-hmm.
for them, and the ways that I'm able to help them, whether it's with advice or whether it's just knowing that they just need a shoulder. Um, that has been like the biggest blessing, is to experience that strength and empathy, the way it's like filled up my heart for other people, has been a huge blessing.
No, I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah, those are a little bit different because I always ask this and I'm always curious, what people say, and it it is in some ways there is similarity in that often it's kind of two sides of a coin, right? Like the thing that is the hardest is also in some way the thing that you also value greatly. Um,
Yeah.
different examples, but I see a lot of that kind of two sides of the same issue, if you will, or the same challenge that end up being the thing that gives you strength and the thing that helps you see yourself differently. And um, that's the part that I think is really cool. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about what the podcast experience has been. So you've done that, you've been able to really learn from people. And so has that kind of, has it been exactly what you imagined, or has it, did it become something you didn't imagine? What has that whole kind of podcasting experience been like for you?
I've I've really enjoyed it, and it's been more than I could imagine. Like um I think it's just been a huge blessing to like see the difference in me,
Mm,
and now that it's picking up even more, like to hear back how it's helping other women, I couldn't have imagined that. And that just simple conversations, and it's not with, I mean, they're like Corey Weathers. I don't know if you know Corey Weathers.
and I
She's
don't know her, but I would love to know her.
yeah, right. But she's incredible
Yeah,
and
she's
has
incredible.
this wealth of knowledge, and she's so intelligent and so smart. She's been on the podcast, but not all of them are like that. Like it's learning from incredible women, but it's also learning from incredible women who just have been doing it.
Yeah,
And
right.
they don't have always have these like eloquent
Platform.
quotes,
Yeah.
yeah, platforms or whatever, but like you can feel in the words that they say like their heart, and you just get when you learn so much. Like I've learned so much, but I've also just been empowered so much that like it just can be done.
Hmm.
And um because I don't want to get to retirement, or whenever we leave the military, whether it's a full 20 years or whatever, like I refuse to get to that moment and have my family, like my kids, bitter that dad has been gone all the time, or me bitter that he's been gone all the time. Like we've been to retirement ceremonies where nobody's there,
Yep.
and we just refuse to do that. And it just helps so much to talk to people who are struggling, but are like not struggling, but are have been having hard times,
Sure.
but figuring out how to process through those and face those. And I love it so much. Like
Yeah.
I just don't always have words.
No, I know. I can imagine. And I think you're so right that I think that um, the ability to get to whatever that end state is, whether it's at 20 or it's at 15 or it doesn't matter, right? But the ability to get to the other side of military service and feel um, like you're not carrying sort of baggage forward beyond that, I think to get to that point is a choice, certainly, but it's also this kind of active engagement that I think we have
Mm-hmm.
to do along the way to try to help work through some of those things that come up that are hard, and learn what others are doing and figure out ways to move beyond those so that we can get to that end state and not have those things still on our back. So I love that you're giving people a chance to hear those stories and to tell them as well. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it because it's like the military spouse community is unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere else, and there is so much strength and love, but at the same time we move every 2 to 3 years, and we just don't get the opportunity to um like feed off of our
Hmm.
community the way
Hmm.
you would if you lived in a super solid
Yep.
town, like, you know what I mean.
Yep.
um, so that's why I love the podcast so much, is because it's creating that ability to feed off of the community and the wealth of knowledge that we have in a way that like I just haven't seen anywhere else. And it's amazing, and I just get really goosebumpy and happy.
So, if folks were interested in either listening or if they felt like they have a story they want to tell or any of that, how can folks find you and how can they get connected with you?
The best way is probably the website, and it's just thewaitingwarriors.com. And on the bottom is like links to all the different podcast platforms so they can find their favorite one.
Okay.
Um, or you can search it. But yeah, from the podcast or from the website, you can find the podcast, you can find the social media things that you want. That's just kind
Yep.
of like a good
Easy, easy,
sense.
easy. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you were hoping to get to that we didn't talk about?
No, I just hope that like anybody out there, like I just hope you can know and understand that you can do it. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it has to be miserable.
Right.
It doesn't. It can, you can be, you know, 3 kids, 3.5 years and under, alone for an entire summer and still have some really beautiful, amazing moments,
Mm-hmm.
personally and with your kids. Or you can be 4 kids, 7 years and under, and in the middle of a pandemic and wanting to lose your mind at the same time, but still having amazing, beautiful moments. And it's hard, but there can just still be so much joy and beauty in it if you look for it and if you are like intentional about
Yep.
creating it.
No, I think the intention is absolutely the key element for sure. So
Yeah.
I hope folks will tune in and kind of hear some of those stories because I think we don't always know when we're going to need to pull that tool in and put it to use. But when we've listened and we've kind of opened ourselves up to other ideas, then when that moment happens, we've got that tool that we
Mhm.
can pull in and make use of. And so sometimes it's almost like maintenance, like you don't need it right now.
Yeah.
But I'm just
No,
going to listen.
totally.
I'm going to listen to these stories and I'm going to hear what these people are doing because at some point I may hit a valley and I'll know, what do I need to go back and listen to or what is that thing that person was doing that I can now use and help carry me through and, out of that valley. So I think it's good that we are honest about the fact that it's not always going to be hills, right?
Right.
There's going to be valleys. And if we're expecting them and we know we're strong enough, then we can weather them. And pulling in
Yeah.
people like yourself and pulling in tools is I think how we all kind of make it to the other end and do
Yeah.
it, hopefully with a smile on our face.
Well, it's exactly like that. I don't know if you've heard it. My husband and I were like, we had home and marriage backgrounds with our
Mm,
bachelors. So, like in marriage therapy and counseling and all that kind of stuff, people always say that like the best cure for any marriage trouble is education.
mm-hmm.
Because like you think about marriage, like there is no marriage on this earth that is not going to have a number of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's the love of your life, it's two people trying to build a life together, and there are just going to be things that you have to handle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you spend time just constantly trying to educate yourself on the best way to have the best marriage, then when that comes up, like
Right.
you said, like
You've got the
pull up a
tool.
book, you've got the tools, and you're like, oh, right, I'm not supposed to be yelling right now. I'm supposed to go to my room and take a deep breath and not get upset at my husband because what he's doing isn't really trying to hurt me
Right.
and bug me. He's just
Whatever.
making his sandwich the way he's making his sandwich. You know what I mean?
No, no.
But it's the same with military life. Like there is no one who has been a military spouse who has just blissfully gone by. Like it's
Like,
just unrealistic to think. So if you know that it's going to be challenging at times, like why not give yourself the tools
yep.
now?
No,
Type
absolutely.
of
I
stuff.
love it.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to following along and listening in on what you're talking about. So I'm excited to get to meet you and I hope our audience will do the same. So thank you for joining us today.
You.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this spotlight. Hope you are having a great week, and we will catch you on the next one. Be sure to like our Facebook page so you can see when these videos are uploaded every Wednesday. Take care.